You are listening to the Mindset Forge podcast. I'm Barton Bryan, your host. Today, I've got an awesome interview with James De Lacey. He's a strength and conditioning coach here in Austin, Texas, and a friend of mine. He's popping on here in just a few seconds, but just really excited about this conversation, all about strength and nutrition, because this man and his website, his wife and him work with athletes and just regular people, but specifically liftbigeatbig.com. What a great segue to knowing what you're going to get when you're working with somebody like James and his programs. And really one of my key components to anything related to fitness is you got to think about nutrition and fitness, strength and nutrition. We can't eat like a mouse and train like a gorilla. Not going to work. So anyway, he just popped on here. James,
I did.
So glad to have you here, man. You sound great there. Everything good on your front?
Yeah, I'm all good. I'm a serial podcaster, so I use Riverside multiple times a week.
All
so
right.
I've got everything set up.
Let's go. First of all, how's the young child? You had a baby last time I saw you.
Yes.
and your wife, but now I'm sure you're 1 year old or getting close.
She is 1 and a couple of weeks. So
right.
She's getting through. We're actually expecting a second baby now at the end of the year.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So it's
when do you start teaching your baby deadlifts
now
and clean and snatch? Like that stuff. Like, yeah, you got to start early.
Yep. She's in the gym with us every time we train. Mona bought her a little kids like barbell and foam plates and stuff. So she has that in the house too. So we're starting her as soon as she's walking.
I feel like hanging from a pull-up bar, just like getting that grip strength up right early. I mean, they have such like primal instincts to hold their body weight. So I think that
she started gymnastics class last week. So there's like a little kids gymnastics stuff. So she's learning all the different things there.
That's fantastic. Yeah. All right, James, give me a quick just overview of your background, a little kind of where you come to fitness from, and why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah. I'll give you the shorter version, or try to at least.
Bring it.
Went to university, got my master's in sport and exercise science, graduated in 2014 with that. But through that time, basically being an athlete and coaching. So my first ever job was coaching. It was actually coaching tennis at my local tennis club when I was like 13 years old. It was my first job. It was pretty much coaching's really been my only job throughout my life. So I was kind of through there, did that for about 10 years as well. Like part-time, I was doing other things, coached various other teams of strength conditioning. Started in professional rugby league. That was kind of like my first little foray into the professional side. So if anyone's not familiar, rugby league and rugby union, similar sports, slightly different. But they're big down, obviously, in New Zealand, the Southern Hemisphere. It was actually just the big rugby league Vegas doubleheader that was on last weekend. Like they brought the NRL over to Vegas. But so did that. Then worked in Romania in 2015 with the professional rugby team, full-time there. That was a shit show. Came back to New Zealand soon after that. Worked with our New Zealand women's rugby league team. So that is New Zealand versus Australia and some other international teams there, various things. Then moved to Austin, Texas, where I am now, working with the professional rugby team that was here in the Major League Rugby. And then went back to Romania in end of 2018 to work with the Romanian national team for the World Cup and then their sevens team to qualify for the Olympics. Then COVID hit 2020, back home to New Zealand, then just moved everything online. And I've just been online ever since. As you mentioned in your intro, Lift Big, Eat Big, one of the companies there, Sweet Science of Fighting, which focuses on combat sports and combat athletes, physical preparation. So I've kind of married the online stuff that I've learned with marketing and whatnot, and then with the strength conditioning side, brought it all together. And that's what I'm doing now.
I love it, man. That's great. And are you from New Zealand?
Yep.
Okay.
Born and raised.
So, I mean, you're coming from the tradition of like, I know a little bit about this, so I'm going to talk about the All Blacks for about 5 seconds, and then I'll know nothing more than that. So for those of you who don't know who the All Blacks are, this is a New Zealand rugby team, right? That was like, they're kind of considered like the greatest cult. You know, people think about like the John Wooden culture of like UCLA or Steve Kerr or Popovich, or, you name some great, coach and organization that seems to win. So the All Blacks were that for international rugby.
Yeah. I think they're the most winningest team in the world.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, That sounds right. Give me just one thing that like you understand about the All Blacks culture of winning that you learned, or maybe that you utilize in your own life.
Damn, I don't know, because I haven't been involved in that camp because there's mainly been rugby league in New Zealand, so I can't say. I know people often talk about there's no hierarchy as such in terms of, for example, you see in a lot of professional soccer, prima donnas, right? Players that don't carry their own bags, they kind of wait and everything is done for them. And especially within rugby culture, like players and staff will take everything. So when you get off the bus, the team's always helping get the bags off the bus. The team's always helping clean the locker room, all that kind of stuff. So everyone's kind of on an equal playing field. There's no one that just sits there and gets everything done for them. And that's a real rugby thing, I think, as well. But it's definitely a culture that's in New Zealand too.
Yeah. From the personal trainer standpoint, there's more than two types of clients, but there's the client who like wants you to lift the dumbbell and put them on their legs so they can do chest press or whatever. And then there's the client that just will not let you and wants to do that first because, they feel like that's their job. Like I'm supposed to be able to lift the weight onto my thighs and then put it onto my shoulders or whatever. I just think it's funny when I start working with a new client and it's like, you just kind of like see it really early, like where it's like, oh, they want me to put the dumbbells on their knees.
That's what they're paying you for, right?
This is like kind of awesome. This is awesome. I had one guy who's like, he's probably in his 70s now. We started training when he was like 60, and he would never let me help him up. He would never let me pick up a weight. Like I basically just told him what to do, but he wanted to move everything. Yep. And, I just loved that. He was just so old school in that mindset of like, this is my work. I'm paying you to be here to tell me what to do. I'm not paying you to lift the weight for me or help me up or make me feel old or whatever, his psyche was telling him was the reason. But
they're probably the most successful too, right?
Very successful. Still crushing it at like 72 years old. Yeah. But anyway, let's go into, so I interview a lot of people that are obviously in the fitness industry. My space and my niche is really men 40 to 60. These aren't MMA fighters. These aren't rugby guys. These are, men who really want to live their best life, stay healthy, get strong, lose weight. This chapter is tough, right? We know, like you're younger than I am, but like I just literally turned 49 yesterday.
Oh yes, so, happy birthday! I did see that. Thank you.
Yeah. I was like, and it was weird. Like, I mean, not that 49 is a weird number, but just like a birthday passes and you're like, what's this now? And of course, the first thing I do, I went to the gym. I was like, I got to work out. I got to make sure I'm still strong. Right. But anyway, but I'm speaking to those people my age or, slightly older or younger that are just looking for ideas, concepts, motivation, more so discipline, I think is the key, takeaway. But let's go into strength and nutrition and how you really train people. Obviously, you have a lot of the more specialized training programs on your website, but you also have like build strength, build muscle, like, kind of the foundational stuff. So let's stay there for the purpose of my listeners. Sure. What is the biggest mistake people make, whether they start with you or just in general when they start trying to get healthy and strong? What are some things that you feel like, man, if somebody could just understand this, that would be
dude, there's so many.
I know. Right? This is what's the first thing that pops in your head? Because I mean, yeah, we could spend the whole hour talking about
the first thing that pops in my head is I'm going to start boring and then I can go into maybe more less boring. But consistency is number one. People think they can just come in, I'm going to do 3 months or 6 months of muscle building, but it's like, man, you see the people you're looking up to, they've been doing it for 10 plus years, right, and they have their muscle, and it takes time. And consistency is not just consistency of training for a length of time, it's also consistency in your training program, because people will program. I mean, I'm a serial program hopper. I have training ADHD to the max, but the fundamentals of what I'm doing are always there. I'll always do some form of lower body strength, upper body strength, whatever it is. But if I'm doing something else, it might be an addition, or maybe some of the accessory stuff might change. So if you have the core concepts in there, you're going to be okay. But yeah, consistency is a big one around strength and muscle building. Obviously, if we go to the nutrition side, it's never eating enough or eating enough protein, which becomes as very common, especially among females.
Yeah.
But just generally not getting that zero point 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein per day. And it can be tough if you're not used to eating like that. So that's something that takes some time. More stuff around training off the top of my head. Often it's not training hard enough. And yeah, it sounds cliche. It doesn't mean like drilling yourself to the ground every session, but you got to at least exert some effort in training and not kind of just go around to different machines and do a bunch of a few reps here, a few reps there, and maybe get a little sweat going. And then just having a plan and doing all that,
Yeah.
and having a way to progress, even if it's just writing down the weight you did that week and the number of reps, so you can see next week, okay, I'll do the same. I'm not feeling it that good. Oh, that feels really easy. I'll go up, and then noting down your progression. You don't like you'll see a lot of people who even start strength training. Like you don't have to have the most crazy scientific periodized training program. Most people started just training damn hard, and they get results just doing the things that they see, and you can easily do that.
If you're making your body do stuff it doesn't like to do, it's going to adapt generally
Yeah.
to that stimulus. And I think the interesting thing, and when you train people in person, you really see one thing I really see often is like people will tell me, "Oh, I can't do another one," and I'm watching, like like you're talking about. I've trained my entire life. I know when somebody is close to
Yeah.
failure and when they just are uncomfortable because it's hard, right? And I might see a client who's 5 away from true failure,
Mm.
and they'll just be like, "No, that's it. I can't do it anymore." And I'm like, you start to realize that like so much of what we're trying to help the person with is actually like understanding what their true failure is, because again, if they keep quitting 5 away from failure, their body is not going to continue to get stronger. It's going to be very comfortable stopping at that point. And therefore, they talk about like rate of perceived exertion, and which is kind of like, if a 10 out of 10 is going to failure, 9 out of 10 you might have 1 extra rep in the tank, or 8 out of 10 is 2 extra reps. But the general kind of science these days, and the studies are saying you got to get 8 out of 10, 7. I mean, there is probably some science that says 7 out of 10 is okay.
Yeah, for big compounds and stuff, you can go kind of 7, 8. And then with the isolation, you typically want to get a little closer to that 8, 9. You can go to failure. It's not necessary. But as you mentioned there, like people who stop well short, it's a trained skill to be able to push that far too. Because that's why a lot of beginners typically can train more often, because you just literally can't output. You can't even get there. You can't even get to real true failure as a beginner, just because you haven't trained yourself to get there. So that's typically why beginners can typically handle a little more training. But then as you learn to be able to get there, your training just becomes more effective.
All right. So let's say someone is going, pretty close to failure. They kind of figured out what their body is capable of doing, and they're tracking. They're doing this. They're getting in that 8, 9 RPE. There's something called like systemic fatigue or neural fatigue that I don't think a lot of people are very aware of. This is probably something that people like us might talk about, or we might talk to our clients about. But like, I think this is a really important thing to understand. You mentioned it with concentration or isolation exercises, like like a bicep curl or something like that, or a lateral raise. Like you can get pretty close to failure. You're not going to create systemic fatigue. You can recover. You can do multiple sets of it, or multiple days of it. But like if someone is doing like heavy squats, heavy deadlifts, even like a heavy bench press where they're getting close to 1 to 5 reps, where they're close to failure, like talk about that, like understanding the need for kind of systemic recovery, and how to think about that versus just like, hey, I'm in the gym doing machines only, getting a little pump going, or I'm doing more bodybuilding stuff where it's like higher reps and more isolation.
I think the easiest way to look at it is just the number of muscles being used. That's just like the easiest way to conceptualize it. If you're using a lot of muscles, for example, in a squat, you're using your entire leg muscles, large muscles, quads, glutes. You're supporting the load with your back. And your upper body's involved. Plus, you're having to try to breathe with load on you. And then you're doing a lot of reps close to failure or to failure. It's going to take you longer to recover. Then, obviously, with isolation, you're typically training a single joint movement, bicep curls, lying leg curls, etc. You're you're using essentially one, maybe two muscle groups within that, and it's just easier to recover from. So you can basically beat those exercises to a pulp more so than you can if you're doing a shit ton of compound exercises. They're what you're going to take you long to recover. So that's just something to be aware of in training. I think, especially with your demographic you're talking to, like 40, like maybe the older, slightly. I'm not going to say older, slightly,
Not yet,
slightly
sir.
older
Not yet.
population.
Yeah,
You
no.
got impaired recovery, not impaired. You have longer recovery times typically there, and then you. I will say as well, if you go down the nutrition route as well, you have the idea of sarcopenia, which is like almost like protein resistance. So you typically need to eat more protein than someone younger to see the same muscle growth gains. So that's just something to be aware of typically. But even in that population, like if you push too hard a lot, it's going to be a lot harder to train more often. And instead of training once a week and then recovering for the rest of the week, you're better off, giving the body the stimulus 2, 3, 4 times a week if you can.
Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely a challenge. And something I've noticed over the last 5 years is from 44 to 49, it's like I could train 6 days a week, 4 or 5 years ago, pretty well with squats and compound movements. Whereas nowadays I'm like, if I'm doing heavy squats or something that's really like, take some axial fatigue, like I'm definitely bringing the total volume down on that day, maybe taking a rest day the night before. I factor that stuff in, and I try to when I'm training clients 3-4 days a week, I've got a couple of clients that are really, my age, but are really pushing the weight and wanting to like get strong. I'm definitely looking at, okay, what are we doing on Monday? Where's the rest happening? Which joints are being, used over and over? And so, because you have, again, you can have all the right intentions, be at the gym more than most people, and yet, the results kind of slow down because either you're not recovering, you don't have enough protein, you're not, sleeping well enough, or you're just beating your body up a little bit too much.
Yeah, that's where consistency comes in too, right? When I mentioned in the beginning, because if you're people come on new training programs, very motivated, very excited. The first few days they go hard, and then you start to feel the aches and pains, and your training, effective training, goes down because you can't do certain movements, you can't push them as hard, then it just becomes the cycle eventually where you fade out. Then you have to start again once you've kind of recovered from whatever's happening. So having that consistency where you don't need to push every single session, start 3 reps short from failure. If you can get an idea where that is for a couple of weeks, then you might do a week where you're going 2 reps short of failure. You might even need to go 1 short of failure, depending on how your body is. You can just cycle through that over and over again.
Right. Yeah. Again, like that idea of like, this is one of those challenges. Like you see these, whether it's pumping iron from 1975, and you see these guys just like, oh, like just screaming and going to like absolute failure with maybe even like some assisted reps past failure and all this. And the imagining this is how it needs to get done. Or maybe that's what you did in your 20s.
Yeah.
And were successful, but you start trying to do that in your 40s and 50s, and that's where the nagging injuries or you're just pushing too hard, and then your body doesn't need that to still effectively have results.
For sure. And it's a funny thing because you'll always look back at the past and what you used to do, and you'll compare what you're doing now to what you used to do.
Yeah.
And then, if you start going down that road, it's only bad thing. Only bad things can happen.
Yeah. It was like, man, I remember when I was 23 and I could bench, blah, blah, blah. And then you go in there and you put that on and you're like, oh, my rotator cuff. Oopsie.
Exactly.
Yeah. For a while, I just wouldn't let my clients bench. I was just like, we're all doing incline first, because I was having too many clients with like, just ending up with some sort of rotator cuff because they were, posture issues, tension, weakness in the rotator cuff and upper back. And they wanted to bench, and I was letting them do it. And then I was like, not worth it. Because then they'd be 3 months with like, PT and so and it's been awesome. I actually, ramping somebody up to, with incline first and even some cables, just to help them kind of get more activation in the muscles and in the, and then getting into like flat bench or flat dumbbells, once they're already conditioned versus starting deconditioned and going to bench has been a game changer for my clients' results and just getting, not having that kind of shoulder problem show up, 2-3 months into the training.
Yeah. And a lot of people forget that there's no exercise that you have to do. There's no exercise that will give you the magic results for bigger, whatever muscle group it is. And if you can't bench or whatever it is for whatever reason, they don't. Like I can't do dips. I've never been able to do dips since I was a teenager.
And you're not a real strength guy.
Yeah, exactly. I can't grow triceps now or shoulders because I can't do dips, right? But it's like my sternum, just like, I think I had some kind of sternum injury when I was younger. And if I do any dips, it gets so bad, like it hurts to do any pressing, any pushing, hurts to cough, and it hurts like that for months, and it ruins my training. And I've tried to get back into doing dips multiple times through my teens and 20s. Never worked, so I just never do them. And it's just something that you got to figure out for yourself, where there's certain exercises that might not be good for whatever reason. There's other exercises you can do.
Yeah. I think we get a little hung up on like something we used to be able to do well, or something we saw someone do once that looked really strong, and then we want to be able to do it versus and I get the idea of like, hey, I like an exercise, why wouldn't I want to get better at that? Because if you struggle getting to the gym, and there's something you like to do, then you're more likely going to want to go to the gym and do that. The problem with that is what happens across the world is International Chest Day is Monday and everybody benches because that's all they ever did when they were kids.
Yeah.
And that's the like one thing that you want to hang your hat on. Like, what do you bench? Well, 275. I got 3 reps. And, and if you look at as a strength coach, you watch them do it. They're bouncing it off their chest. Yeah. All the typical things are happening. But so it's like that in between of like, you don't want to train somebody or have somebody go to the gym and hate everything they're doing. Right. What if I was like, okay, you're going to the gym, you're going to do burpees, and then you're going to sprint on a treadmill, and then you're going to come, it's like, unless they're like burpees are my jam. Yeah. Maybe pepper in burpees once they've kind of built some momentum, maybe not putting in like, or something, fill in the blank for some exercise that nobody likes to do, right? Like we want our clients, or we want people that are listening, we want you to enjoy the process of going to the gym, enjoy like getting better at something, but we don't want it to be just like, I only do the things I like to do, because those are usually push movements, like chest press and things like that.
Chest and biceps.
Right. And it's never the posterior chain. It's never nobody ever wants to do rotator cuff work or upper back, mid trap development and that kind of stuff, which is probably the stuff that's going to save you from walking around with a hunchback at 93 years old.
Exactly. And it's funny because in professional sport, you get, I think a lot of people see it as coaches will make their players do burpees and whatever else as punishment, right? Exercise as punishment for various things. And it's a very misguided way to look at strength conditioning and fitness. And you'll see the best programs in the world don't do that. It's not a thing. It's only a thing in very shitty sports teams programs. And I'm talking all levels. That goes from NFL all the way down to whatever. That happens. Right. There's shit coaching all around, and punishing with exercise is one of those things. Yeah. And exercise needs to be programmed in a way where you're trying to elicit give a certain stimulus and elicit a certain adaptation. And it means that it has to be planned with whatever in mind. And it doesn't mean you did something wrong, so I'm going to punish you with exercise, and you start associating everything you do with a punishment. Whereas it should be something that's enjoyable and something that you're trying to get better at versus just doing work. And that's one of the things that often comes up with when people think about exercise, that maybe stops them from even getting to the gym.
Right. Or, and clients are already in this kind of roller coaster of like, I ate so bad last night, I gotta go.
I gotta go punish myself.
Right. I'm gonna go run on the treadmill or do this or that. Like, I gotta sweat it out, whatever. Like, and all those things sound healthy, but they're totally opposite.
Borderline eating disorder, but
right. Right. Fitness disorder versus eating disorder. Well, let's talk about eating, because you mentioned, protein intake, and even
Mm,
as you get older, keeping muscle and building strength, it just becomes harder. It's just as
mm.
our bodies change and we get a little bit older, and maybe testosterone isn't quite what it used to be. And when you're 25, like, it's just a little bit harder to build and keep muscle. So how do you, when you have a little bit of an older client, what are some things that you're telling them to make sure they get right so that they can be optimal?
Yeah, I mentioned before about the sarcopenia, the protein intake. You got to essentially you got to prioritize the shit out of protein. I mean, you have to when you're younger too, but when you're older,
But let's
it's
real quick,
almost
let's
yep.
define sarcopenia.
Okay, essentially protein resistance. So
Okay.
the resistance. So you basically have to double. I think the research paper was 20 grams versus 40 grams of whey uh, in younger and older lifters. I have to go back and double check that, but essentially, older lifters needed 40 grams to elicit the same response as 20 grams in younger individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, you need to prioritize protein intake in that, and that's the number one. So other than lifting to stimulate the process, protein to help with the process, and then honestly, it's just the same nutrition rules. As I think the thing is with nutrition, it's a lot of it's common sense. People kind of know what is healthy and what is not. And if you stick to those basics, you're going to be pretty good. The problem that people run into is they start seeing the different fads that come around, right? Carnivores, or I think carnivores still the rage right now, at least what I see on Twitter. So carnivores this thing now. People eating sticks of butter. Um, the whole no carb thing, I think, is still going strong. They'll probably cycle back around soon. Now it's fashionable to eat breakfast when it wasn't fashionable to eat breakfast like 5 years ago. So, these things will keep changing, but the basics are still the same. Eat your protein, eat generally unprocessed foods. Obviously, it doesn't mean avoid everything, but, in moderation. I'm still a big advocate of eating breakfast, especially a high protein breakfast. It's way easier to hit your protein intake if you do that, and you feel way better. Plus, if you look at the research on skipping breakfast, you actually reduce afternoon performance, even if you make up those calories at lunchtime. So that's something to be aware of too if you're training in the afternoons. So follow those basic principles and you're good. Ignore the whole carnivore, keto. Jeez, there's so much stuff now. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like, do I intermittent fast plus keto with a sprinkling of carnivore? Like,
Well, do you remember Carb Night? It was about 10 plus years ago.
I
Uh,
remember when I was in high school, we would eat the day before a big game. We would all get together and eat a whole bunch of
Carb
pasta,
load.
just carb. Like, it was like,
Yeah.
I'm going to eat 4,000 calories of pasta, and that's going to make me like a super athlete the next
Yeah.
night. I don't know how that works, but
It's similar to there was a guy, I think John Kiefer was his name. It was about
yeah.
10 plus years ago. He had a book called Carb Night, and it was like basically you eat all your carbs at nighttime, and
Yeah.
somehow it was just like some magical thing. I'm pretty sure he's just like sitting on an island now, drinking his cocktails, just made bank off selling that stuff. But that shit
Right.
kind of came and went, and I haven't heard of it since. But it's exactly the same as all these other things that are around now.
Right. Somebody said on my podcast, if it sounds sexy, avoid it at all costs.
Yeah,
Like
that's a good rule of thumb.
any diet advice that sounds really cool and like you're tricking your body into something, and like, just get away from it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. The basics still
It's
all working there.
it's funny. All the intermittent fasting was supposed to like help with longevity, and it creates this like resistance. Like the cells get really like resistant to the aging process. Well, they've pretty much determined that just eating at a slight deficit actually does that. And the healthier you are, because the less body fat you have,
Yeah.
the more like that. That's really what they were figuring out. Because when you do intermittent fasting, generally it's hard to eat too many calories if your window of food is like 6 hours, right? So,
Yeah.
oh my God, I started intermittent fasting. I lost weight. It's amazing. Like, well, yeah, okay, because
Yeah.
you
You didn't
can't
eat.
slam 9 burgers in 6 hours. I don't know. So yeah, but that's, and it goes down to, and you just you get in the industry long enough, and everything kind of cycles back around, and this and that, and people make lots of money off things that don't make any sense at all. But that's just kind of how it works. But that's what our job is to really help people, just, hey, let's get them get the craziness out of this. Let's focus on consistency. Let's focus on eating protein. I totally agree with that. I've noticed that about myself. Is like, I've got to eat more protein to keep my overall protein. I'm 220 because I'm so dang tall. It's like if I was 5'6", be a lot easier to eat. But like, I'm just to maintain my body weight, I got to eat 220 grams of protein pretty much daily, or else I just start getting smaller. Like, so when I'm trying to build muscle, like I'm in an improvement season because I try to bodybuild. So when I'm in the improvement season, like I'm literally like just like forcing myself to eat, 250, 260, so that my body will actually adapt and build muscle. Just part of the
you
deal.
must be having to slam shakes as well to try and get all that food.
I try not to, man, because
Dude, you do that without shakes?
I usually do one shake right after my workout, because if I can get like 60 grams, you see that study that came out where they're doing like 100 grams of casein after a workout. Like, anyway, I hate casein, but the idea was basically is like, once the workout, I just try to get 60 grams of protein in a whey shake, and then 2 hours later, I'm back to eating regular food.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of meal prep. I mean, I'm like an OCD, ADHD guy at the gym, like you, tracking everything. I've got my whole week planned out with like exactly how many sets of every body part, so that I'm not overtraining anything specific. I'm prioritizing like my quads and my shoulders this cycle, and I'm counting. I have this whole like just spreadsheet that moves all the stuff data around when I knock it out. But this is what I do. Nobody else wants to do this besides maybe you and like 6 other guys. But this is not what we're asking our clients to do. We're asking them to just follow a plan, eat enough protein, and talk about sleep. I mean, I talk about that a lot, but I think I'd love to hear from you what you understand about just the importance of sleep for recovery.
Yeah, it's funny. It's going to be the same cliche advice everyone gets, right? It doesn't change. It's the same. It's try and get your 8 hours. I've talked to a couple of good sleep researchers actually on my podcast recently, and it's basically, it comes down to get that 7 to 9 hours, however you can. There's a few different ways of doing it, but obviously sleeping through the night is the best. If you work night shift or whatever else, it's about accumulating those hours. So that's just something a little different. That's something new I kind of learned there, that you kind of accumulate that. I think it's called polyphasic sleeping. So you'll sleep like a few hours at a time or a couple of hours at a time. So I think there's a guy who sailed around the world, and obviously he can't sleep 8 hours straight sailing around the world. So he'll sleep in like hour increments or something like that. So that's just something, but I mean, it's not something I wouldn't go changing your whole routine and start sleeping like in 1 hour, 2 hour slots.
But I think that does show value to napping.
Yes.
Like
if you have time. If you have time, definitely.
Right. But if you didn't get a good night's sleep, going and getting a 30-minute, an hour nap is I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, I hate napping because I wake up tired. Like, okay, yeah, you're going to be, because you just woke up. But yeah, you'll get back on track. You'll get back on track.
You can also caffeine
your body
nap.
wakes up. Yeah.
You can caffeine nap too if it's not too late in the day as well. I have a little bit of caffeine and then nap, so you wake up without so much the grogginess. And then I found that when I nap, if I sleep on the floor, on a hard floor, carpet or wood or whatever, and you lie flat on your back, damn, it feels so good on your back when you do that too. And then you sleep for, I don't know, 30 to 45 minutes, whatever. You literally get woken up because the back of your head hurts lying on the hard floor. So then it's all good.
There you go. Hey, what life hack?
Practical.
Right,
I'm all about practicality.
On the floor.
Yep. I'll sell my ebook. You can buy my ebook, $99.
Yeah. How to sleep. How to get your entire night's sleep in 30 minutes. That's what you should sell. If people think they could get full recovery 30 minutes by sleeping on like a bed of nails, they would go out and buy a bed of nails.
I'll get ChatGPT to write it.
All right. So we discussed there's not one exercise that everybody should do, but when it comes to not building muscle, because there's hypertrophy and there's strength training. And I know you're coming from the background of sports, power, strength. What's for somebody who just needs to get stronger for whatever reason? It's not necessarily about like building muscle mass. It's about like having more neuro strength. What are ways that you feel like people need to understand about like training compound movements, core, all that kind of stuff to make sure they're optimizing their strength.
Yeah, there's a few different things. I think. Do you want me to direct us towards the 40 to 60 population, or just generally?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's keep it in that wheelhouse.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think the first thing to look at is longevity, and there's a few. Where do I want to start with this? If we're talking, let's talk pure strength development. Nothing else matters. You just want to get as strong as damn possible. That's all that matters. Pure powerlifting programs get that for you. You need to lift heavy enough, again, as we mentioned regarding RP or percentages, to get enough volume there. There are a bazillion programs in powerlifting that work, and it's just literally basics. You can even follow just a straight linear periodization of a squat, doing sets of 8, sets of 6, sets of 5, sets of 3, sets of 1, and that'll get you there. If we're looking more on the physiology side within muscle, we can really, because I think when people are looking at strength, people are only thinking about 1RM squat, bench, deadlift, right? But there's more to strength development than just being strong in those lifts, right? You want to be strong just in everyday life. Typically, if you're at power and speed declines rapidly as you age, and those things I think many people don't touch on as they age, which they need to kind of maintain and develop. So
people always talk about how much muscle mass you lose, but people lose that like power and acceleration
very quickly,
ability
very quickly. So you need to have some of that in there. So let me cover how that would look if you're. I think most people haven't done much of that in the past, maybe 10 years. So going in and suddenly doing hundreds of box jumps and jumping off benches and shit, you're going to blow yourself up very, very, very quickly. So this is the approach you need to take for that. Plus, if we're looking at some of the physiology around muscles, you have a double whammy effect, and I'll explain that in a sec. But essentially, you start with extensive or submaximal throws, jumps, plyometrics. And extensive just means submaximal, so you're doing smooth, rhythmic, easy movements. It should be no way near 100%. So think about things like ankle pops or pogos. You're thinking about like jump squats, but you're not talking about trying to jump as high as possible. It's just kind of smooth and rhythmic. Some 2-foot lateral jumps, things like that. It doesn't even have to be anything. You don't have to jump very far. Just getting the movement and getting that rhythm going is going to help prepare your tendons and muscles when you eventually do start to go 100%. You can do this in a circuit format. It becomes almost like a general work capacity circuit. And you can start very, very basic doing it. You can do the same thing with medicine ball throws. So like 10 medicine ball throws one way, 10 medicine ball throws the other way, over your head, under through your legs, chest passes, rebounded off the wall. All that stuff's going to help prepare you later on. And you can kind of do 1, 2, 3, 4 circuits of those. You're getting a shit ton of reps, and you will probably be sore if you haven't done it in a while. And it's going to take you some time to adapt. But those are the things that you need to do for a while to get you prepared for eventually when you start doing some more intensive jumping or plyometrics or throws. Now, you could also class some of the Olympic lifts in some of this as well. However, they are typically loaded and not as fast as doing some things like plyometrics and jumps. So having all of those in there is kind of good to have regardless. And then as you kind of progress through, you can go into, for example, more intense box jumps and things like that. But take your time getting there because, yeah, it's very easy to blow yourself up going straight into something very intense with the speed power stuff. Now, if we looking at some of the stuff within the muscles, when we're trying to maximize force generation capabilities of a muscle, there's a few different things going on there. One of them I really like is this graph, and it's by Komi, Komi. It's an old power training paper. And essentially it shows the change in force by the change in muscle length. So y-axis is the change in force, x-axis is the change in muscle length. So you, for example, bicep curl, I change the muscle length there from point A to point B. Muscle contractile, I produce X amount of force. But then we have a couple of different mechanisms going on. We have a length feedback component, which is the muscle spindle within the muscle. It's an excitatory feedback mechanism. So essentially, it gets excited through the force generation, and it essentially spikes force generation up higher. So I can now produce more force. Then we have a force feedback component that kind of dampens that force output. And that's the Golgi tendon organ within the tendon and the muscle. Essentially, it pumps the brakes as a protective mechanism. You can enhance this excitatory mechanism through plyometrics, through the rate of stretch. So as we mentioned before, ankle pops, jumps, etc., things like that. That rate of stretch will help sensitize that muscle spindle to help you produce more force, again, to be stronger. But then you want to desensitize this Golgi tendon organ. And So in untrained or lesser trained individuals, this thing kicks in really quickly. So if you have like untrained individuals drop off a box, this protective mechanism kicks in almost instantly and you don't produce as much force. Whereas to desensitize this, it's just heavy strength training and that desensitizes this part. So you kind of get both ends of the spectrum. It's kind of how I hinge a lot of my strength training philosophy around this. It's the idea that you don't want to just stick to pure heavy strength training. Yes, if you're a power lifter, you have competitive aspirational goals in there. That makes sense. You're specializing in a sport. But for general health, longevity, even sports performance, you need to really touch on both sides. This is only one of the reasons, but it's a good illustration of a reason why, because you're able to produce more force per change in muscle length doing both. And obviously, you want to be able to, longevity-wise, stop yourself from falling, be able to do more athletic tasks, run around with your kids, run around with your grandkids, etc. And you're only going to be able to do that if you're using or doing those movements.
Right. That's interesting. I mean, people might get a little lost in the sauce with the, Golgi tendon organ and those types of
I tried to break it down so it was layman's there.
But yeah, I mean, basically, layman's terms, your muscles have little like sensors in there basically to tell them when there's a lot of force happening, especially on deceleration or stretching of the muscle. So these things kind of kick in, and if you're not trained, these things kick in quickly, and they don't allow you to.
So basically, blunt force production.
Is that right?
Yeah. So basically, you just won't produce as much force,
right?
Especially if it's a protective mechanism, right? Because otherwise, the things, the muscle's going to rip off the bone. We're not going to let you do that.
Right. Somebody like a sprint coach said, your body will only run as fast as it thinks it can decelerate.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
And I don't know if that's true, but it sounded true. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's almost like that. It's like your body has a defense mechanism. It's not going to produce too much force that it doesn't think it actually has the ability to decelerate from or something like that. So, but if you jump off a high enough thing, it won't matter because it doesn't know that you're about to hit the ground 10 feet, below. So you can create way too much force on your body just by jumping off something too high. But yeah, I like your point of view of just on like, getting into some plyometrics, getting into some of that without overdoing it. Like we don't need to get the two boxes stacked on top of each other and start trying to max out, your box jumping vertical leap. But incorporating that in. So how would, if someone is like getting started with a strength program, let's say for squats and things like that, let's stick with kind of lower body strength. How would that periodization look like? Would you do it like one day of the kind of the mid-range plyometrics and then strength a few days later, or how would you do?
No, I'll put it all in the same session. So it'll be typically a session goes an exercise order from the fastest exercise to the slowest exercises. So you might do your normal warm up, and then you'll do your plyometrics, jumps, throws. Initially, you'll be doing your circuits, so easy extensive circuits. Even just jumping rope. Jumping rope counts as that. You could literally just jump rope as part of that thing to start with. So that would be in there. And then after that, you would typically go into, say, a loaded power exercise, but that's not necessary if you're not training for sports performance or anything like that. You can kind of skip that one. But for example, that could be like a weightlifting derivative, clean high pulls, power snatches, power cleans, whatever. It could even be loaded jumps, but we don't even have to go down that road. It could just be even medicine ball throws in that one, like something that's loaded for power development. You would do that after you've done a lot of the circuit stuff initially. And then you'll go into your heavy squat stuff. So all that stuff kind of primes you to the point where you get to your heaviest strength work. Typically, I've found, though, this is, I guess you could say against what I'm trying to say now. I've found that even for myself, reversing the order tends to feel better if you have nagging joint pain, tendon pain or whatever. So typically, this is not quote unquote optimal, but whatever. Optimal doesn't matter if you can't do the shit. So if you sort of flip it on its head, do your heavy stuff first, and then, especially if you haven't done a lot of the stuff before and you have nagging knees or ankles, whatever, do your heavy squats first, and maybe some other accessories if you need to, and then go do your jump circuits and plyo circuits. You'll feel way better doing it versus the other way around. The other way around is if your body is perfectly fine, no aches and pains, maybe you've done a little bit in the past, do it that way. And then if you're sore, have pains, flip it around.
Yeah. I think too, besides like, you don't want to walk in cold and go do heavy, right? But like as long as you warm up properly,
warm up, do your heavy stuff,
right?
and
But as long as you do that, like the first 30 minutes of your workout, you have the most like neuromuscular, just like
you're freshest.
You're mentally probably most there. Heck, your pre-workouts kicked in. I mean, all the so I mean, yeah. So if sometimes like because I don't want to overload my body, I'll do like RDLs at the end of my hamstring workout. But if I was 25, I would never do that. I'd be like, I'm doing RDLs first because it's a big compound movement. I'm going to get the most out of it. But I don't want to deadlift 315 pounds on RDLs, every week. But if I do a whole bunch of hamstring stuff and then come to RDLs at the end, I can keep it at 225, really eccentrically, control it and get it, and really feel great doing it. And I feel like I get, that's again where I just flip things on its head because at 49, that makes a little bit more sense to me because I'm more in the bodybuilding space where I'm trying to get some volume. I want to fatigue the muscle. I don't want to get injured.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and so
rules can change depending on the age too. And there's another strategy that I like to use as well that I think that is never used really that I've seen, and with at least with potentially the population we're talking to now is using loaded isometrics. And I've had knee pain on and off for a while. I mean, I've played a lot of sport. I've done competitive weightlifting for how many years, and it takes its toll. And so I get knee pain, every now and then. And I had some bad knee pain a year or two ago, and I couldn't really do squats or anything like the heavy squats. So I literally just did isometric Bulgarian split squats, 20 to 30 seconds, and I would load it. I got to the point where I was holding 50 or 60 kilos. What's that in pounds? 135 pounds.
135, 140.
Up to 100, yeah. And I was doing that. I was holding that for 20 or 30 seconds a leg, which is damn hard. It is damn hard. And you'll find that
one leg up on a bench, and then you're just deep in that.
Yep, deep in that. So the best thing is you get double action on this one. You get the tendon is being loaded on the front, and tendons love load. If you have tendon pain, you need to load it. You can't rest it. And isometrics are some of the more effective ways to help remodel the tendon. So typically tendon pain, well, I'm not going to say all tendon pain, but typically tendon pain, collagen fibers are all kind of curled together. You kind of want to straighten them out. Isometrics are one of the more effective ways to do that because the movement's so slow. If you go into technical terms of isometric, it's like without movement, but there is movement even though you're not moving. So you get that, plus you have an analgesic effect or a numbing effect of the tendon. So it makes it so the pain typically reduces a lot, so you can do the rest of your training relatively easy. And then on the back leg, you get a wicked loaded stretch on that rectus femoris. So one of the main quad muscles that runs past your hip and past your knee. And what's special about that is because it crosses two joints, you essentially put it under this huge stretch with load because you're flexing the knee and you're extending the hip. So you're just getting this massive stretch. And when you have massive stretch under load, similar to eccentric training, you actually lengthen the muscle. And people will be like, oh, I need to get more flexible. I'm in a static stretch. It's not going to do shit for you. You need to actually load end ranges of movement. That's why full range of motion strength training is mobility training, because you're having to load the end range of motion. And this is one way you can do that. If you go into some of the muscle physiology really quickly, really easy to understand, you have muscle fiber, you have a bunch of muscle fibers wrapped in a cord that's like a muscle fascicle. Then you have these blocks these muscle fascicles made up of blocks called sarcomeres. And you want more sarcomeres in a row. Doing this helps more sarcomeres in a row, which means a longer muscle, which means you can produce more force at longer muscle lengths, which helps become more flexible, helps you produce more force at longer muscle lengths, has injury, quote unquote, prevention things to it too. So it's like that exercise like that it's unparalleled I think for the older population as well.
Yeah. I think that some people probably their head blew up when you said static stretching doesn't.
Yeah.
So go into that, like, 'cause that's somewhat. I mean, I think the idea of like mobility has kind of found its way into, kind of the vernacular of training, but the idea of like loading, doing full range of motion loaded exercises to improve your mobility. Yeah. I noticed that in my training, but also just in when I'm doing yoga and like some of the like the deep movements and kind of flow and how that actually increases my flexibility, because I'm not just static stretching. I'm actually like really moving to the end ranges of motion. What have you seen from training and from also the science recently?
Yeah.
Why does that work so well? Besides kind of like lining up the spindles and things like that.
So the big thing, I think everyone's experience, probably what I've experienced, you go, oh, I'm going to static stretch every night, every morning, whatever it is, so I can become more flexible. And it just, nothing changes. Like literally nothing changes. I've done that many times when I was younger. And let's start with flexibility versus mobility then, because when we're talking flexibility, we're typically talking like passive range of motion, right? You're lying on the floor, the physio lifts your leg up to assess the range of motion of your hamstrings. That would be passive flexibility. Look, he's podcast dog. Do you say you have passive flexibility, then you have an active flexibility or active range of motion, right? So that would be mobility, being able to actually control the end range of motion. Typically with passive flexibility, you might not be able to control the end range of motion. That is problematic if you're doing various movements, because if you get into the end ranges of motion, you can't produce force. That's where muscles go pop. So when you're doing static stretching, so typically people will static stretch before they train. Honestly, it doesn't matter that much because you're probably not going to go straight from static stretching into a heavy squat. But regardless, you're increasing range of motion in the short term because you've increased your tolerance to the stretch, or the tolerance to almost the pain. And if you look at the research within static stretching, you see that while you may see some increases in range of motion from 3 to 8 weeks of doing this, there's no actual structural change in the muscle or tendon. So it's all just down to stretch tolerance. And if there's no structural change, it means there's no long-term change in range of motion. Whereas mobility training or loading the end range, we've already talked about the muscle fiber stuff. So loading these end ranges is going to help you create chronic or long-term change in your mobility and range of motion. That's simply squatting deep, bench pressing to your chest. I mean, obviously, you're not going to go in and start putting in your max weights and bench pressing to your chest if you've only been benching halfway for your whole life. It's a progressive thing. But there's other things you can do as well that can really accentuate that stretch. So if anyone's familiar with John Meadows, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, bodybuilding guy on YouTube, he has one, if you search Meadows lat stretcher, he's got an awesome exercise that's on the lat pull down. Essentially, your foot's on the bench, you're standing, you're leaning forward with the neutral handles, and you're kind of pulling back and rowing. That's a really nice one to hammer your lats and your shoulders there with the stretch. You can do, as I mentioned, those loaded Bulgarian split squats, gets you in the end range. You can do the same thing like lying on the floor with a plate on the inside of your leg, almost like in a butterfly that stretches your groin, and you can kind of isometric up against that. You can do the same thing with your pecs, chest flies. Like I had, not long ago, I had some funny left shoulder pain when I was benching and stuff like that. We went to Big Tech's gym. We go there once a week now as my wife's. That's our date. That's our date every week. We get a babysitter. So
that's awesome.
And I was like, oh yeah, I might as well just hit chest flies because they have a machine there. 2 weeks of chest flies, no more shoulder pain when benching, because I was able to like really get that end range and quote unquote stretch it, but under load, and doing reps like that. And that's another thing where people talk about, oh, my upper traps on my chest are tight, so I don't want to train them. That training them has the opposite effect. If they're tight and you have these funny pains and whatever, it's probably because they're weak and short. If you're doing your trap work, your shrugs, you're getting the length and stretch on them. Same thing with the pecs. If you're training your pecs properly, you're going to make them stronger and longer. You're going to come out of a lot of those issues.
Yeah. That's, I think too, the other part of that's related to longevity is if your range of motion is limited, you can do a lot more weight, right? So people start, oh, I'm getting stronger on this. Well, okay, you're stopping 2 inches before your chest on incline or bench, right? So you're going up and adding the weight, and eventually you're going to get to a weight that your body cannot stabilize and support. Injuries can happen versus like, hey, you know what? I know my range of motion is not that great. I'm going to take some lighter dumbbells. I'm going to go all the way down into the stretch of the chest press. Pause there and press up and get great chest activation with that deep stretch. with an appropriate weight, like you talk about. You're not
Yeah.
doing chest flies with 70-pound dumbbells. You're finding it, but in doing that, in creating that stretch, you're creating so much more help. Like the muscle is getting healthier,
And you'll build more muscle.
Yeah, yeah. So and that's proven, actually. Like the range of motion for those of you who are like me into like the hypertrophy more so than like how much can I lift. Which I mean, I'm not. It's not about being a bodybuilder. I just think it's like if you're into like building muscle, think about range of motion as a great indicator of like actual hypertrophy versus just a lot of weight, right? If you're working on developing a certain lift for strength, right? That's what James is here for, right? Like James is the guy to help you, get a 405 pound squat, right? Or something like that, or a power clean or something. That's not me, right? That's not my milieu, but that's why I like these conversations. Is like, you're coming at it from a different angle, but we're seeing the same types of things. And especially in this day and age, like one of the worst things that can happen is getting injured, because that injury takes longer to recover from. You come back, unless you've got really good guidance from a PT and then from a coach, like that can lead you back out of that injury into like a really healthy range of motion and back into, all the movements you need to be doing. That can actually derail not just your progress for the months that you're injured, but then like how you then train after that is oftentimes affected mentally by the fact that you're so worried about hurting your shoulder or back or knee again.
And you're not a professional athlete. You have a life, you have kids,
right?
And then you can't do that stuff.
Yeah. And then your wife is like, dude, you can't be hurt. We can't, you can't, but I don't throw my back up very often, but every once in a while I'll do some dumb thing once every like 3 or 4 years.
We all do dumb things.
And we just lay, I'm just like, I can just lay on my bed. That is the limit of my mobility. I'm just laying here trying to recover. But it's like, man, you do a couple of those and you never want to be injured again. But yeah, that's what you got. So you have to think about lifestyle. You have to think about, and I think that's what the hardest thing is, like, what's the best bang for your buck, right? In terms of like working out to get strength, to be healthy, to create longevity without overdoing it, without getting injured. Like that's why, James, you exist, like to help people figure that stuff out. That's why, we have these businesses that we do, what we're doing, because it's not obvious. Those questions are harder. And especially as you get older, they get more complicated. Especially
obviously with the things that go viral on social media now, it's not this stuff. So you get fed everything else.
Yeah. Well, James, hey, I want to honor you, man. Thank you so much for your time. This is awesome. LiftBigEatBig.com. By the way, I interviewed his wife Mona about 7-8 months ago. So if you want to go back, it'll be in the show notes. I'll put her episode there too. So if you love James, you want more of the DeLacey family, you can hear my interview with Mona. She's awesome too. And,
then you can interview little Mia as well.
Mia will be episode 206.